Welcome to the Beat Pain podcast, where we learn what actually works for pain relief, staying healthy, and navigating the medical world. My guest today tells his story of back pain after a traumatic car accident. You will learn what worked and what didn't work for him. He tells us about the emotional roller coaster that he felt as he was dealing with pain. As you are listening to this, I want you to set one goal for yourself. Don't think of this story as something that happened to someone else. Instead, put yourself into the story. Back pain is one of the most common chronic pain issues in America today. I say that not to cause fear, but to help you be prepared in case you ever go through any of this. If you already have back pain, I want this episode to fill you with hope for your future. I think this is really important for people to hear, and I appreciate you listening to my conversation with David Hall. David, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm really excited to have you on, and I know you have a lot of really great stuff to share that I am looking forward to discussing with you. But about 2.5 years ago, you actually had a really serious car accident that changed your life in a really dramatic way, and it changed and created a lot of pain in your lower back that I really want to talk about today. Can you kind of run us through what that accident was and what happened to you at that time?
Yeah, no problem. And thanks, Brandon, for having me on your podcast. I've been looking forward to this. So, about a little bit over 2.5 years ago, I was driving on the freeway and it was late at night, about 9 o'clock at night. It was dark out, it was pouring rain. And as I was driving down the freeway, I began to hydroplane my vehicle, kind of fishtailed. And then it spun out in circles and drifted across the three lanes, smashed into the guardrail on the right hand side of the road, and came to a stop halfway into the right hand lane. And um, I basically sat there, just kind of shook and kind of collecting myself, making sure I was okay. And I sat there for a couple minutes and realized that I was partially in the right hand lane and I had almost gotten hit by some of the vehicles that were still driving down the freeway. So at that point, I decided I can't stay in my car. Something bad is going to happen if I stay in my car. So I got out of my car, walked over to the side of the freeway by the guardrail. And I also noticed that this other vehicle, this truck pulling this giant cattle trailer, had crashed off the road too. So I went and talked to him, checked on him. And over the course of about the next 10, 15 minutes, a couple people had pulled over and were kind of checking on us. There was someone that went up the freeway a little bit with the flashlight and they were waving traffic out of the right hand lane. And at one point, I was just standing by the guardrail when we were really just waiting for the first responders to arrive. And I just so happened to look to my right and saw this SUV drifting across the lanes right towards me. And I had about a split second to react. And my reaction was just to jump up to try to get over the hood. But this SUV nailed me, sent me flying over the guardrail, down the embankment, um, and about 30, 40 feet off the road. And I
Wow.
landed in the bushes and basically just laid there completely conscious.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, I'm about to pass away. And I just basically started praying because I literally thought that I was in the process of passing away.
Wow.
And it was a very surreal moment where I knew that I had just gotten hit by an SUV traveling, maybe 50, 55 miles an hour. I knew that I was hurt badly, and I really did believe that I was dying. And so I laid there, prayed, just praying, waiting for something to happen, really just waiting for something to happen, to like cross
Yeah.
over or see the bright light. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting some weird thing to happen, but it didn't.
Mm.
I continued to lay there, and at one point, the thought crossed my mind, okay, well, I'm still here, but I might be paralyzed because I just got hit by this SUV and I didn't know how badly I was hurt, but I knew I was hurt badly. So at that point, I decided to try to wiggle my fingers and toes, which I was scared to do. I was like, okay, here's let's see how bad this really is. And luckily, I tried to wiggle my fingers and my toes. and I was able to do so. I said, okay, I'm not paralyzed. Let me try to get up. So I tried to push myself up, and that was when I realized that my shoulder was broken. And when I tried to roll over on my side, that was when I realized that my leg was broken.
Wow.
And then I just kind of laid there, just kind of in shock, waiting for someone to find me. And it took about 5 minutes until they were actually able to find me down in the bushes off the side of the road. And within, 5 more minutes, it was just chaos. People were crying, people were yelling. There was the paramedics. They were putting me in a neck brace and putting me on this stretcher. And I really just remember just kind of being in shock, like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening. And
Yeah.
then, they put me in the ambulance, took me to the hospital where I spent the night doing imaging studies, x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs,
Yeah.
because they thought that I was going to have some really bad internal damage, um, which fortunately I didn't have any, organ damage or anything like that, but I had some broken bones and some injuries. So that's really the story of the accident.
Wow. Yeah, that is such a scary moment in life. That's I mean, it's something that seems like it always happens to somebody else, you know?
Absolutely.
And then it happens to you. And I mean, like you were saying, so many thoughts of fear like running through your head. What if this happened? What if I'm paralyzed? Am I going to die? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's really fortunate that you didn't have internal bleeding, that you didn't have paralysis or other things. I mean, and there's so many ways the car could have hit you at just the right angle, just a different way that would have
Yep.
caused so much more damage. And so that is really incredible that, you came away from that accident without something far worse. I mean, you said that and I want to get a picture of what happened here just to understand, kind of get the image in my mind.
Okay.
You said that you were standing, kind of on the side of the road and you saw an SUV that was kind of drifting over. Like, was it also hydroplaning?
Yeah.
Type thing?
So
Yeah.
I was standing on the right side of the road, kind of, looking directly facing the guardrail, kind of looking over the embankment, just kind of passing time. And I just so happened to look to my right and I see this SUV sliding at me sideways. So it wasn't coming at me straight forward. I could see the nose of the vehicle and I could see the rear end of the vehicle, and it was sliding at me sideways. So it was
Wow.
hydroplaning and sliding at me. And where I was standing, it was the front of the vehicle was coming directly at me. So that's when I said I tried to jump to kind of get over the hood.
Yeah.
I was, that was just my split reaction. But what I saw was this SUV sliding sideways at me. I mean, it went from being way over there to boom within a split second. So he was going
Wow.
fast, really
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah. What time of night was this?
It was about 9 o'clock at night.
About 9 o'clock. Okay, yeah. So it's already, yeah, it's dark. It's like
It's
wet.
dark.
It's rainy. That's that just makes it like more depressing. It's man, yeah. So they slide over. They hit you. You jump, and then they hit you, and
Yep,
you fly over the guardrail, and then kind of down this embankment, like down this little slope on the side of the freeway. And so
exactly.
you're just like tumbling down this. I mean, was that like rocks, dirt, bushes? Like, what are you falling into?
So I mean, the thing, it hit me, sent me up, over, and down. So I didn't actually tumble down the hill. I landed face down and when I landed, my arms, they were, back by my side, pointed towards my toes. And I landed I just remember there were leaves and I was in these bushes and I could feel the rain, hitting me on my back and head.
Wow.
Um, but in terms of like, what it really looked like, I just remember laying in leaves.
Wow.
Um, it was very dark, and it was really the perfect storm for something bad to happen. Because
Yeah.
it was like I said, my car, it was partially still in the right hand lane, and my rear end was smashed out from hitting the guardrail. So there were no lights, nothing to warn any oncoming traffic that there was
Mhm.
a car parked in the right hand lane of the
Mm.
freeway 9 o'clock at night when it was dark out. So it was a really scary situation.
before this accident happened, I mean, just give me a little bit of a snapshot. What was life like? I mean, how active were you? What kind of things did you like to do and hobbies and recreation before this accident ever occurred?
Sure. So before the accident occurred, I was very active in the gym. I would work out. I was working out with a personal trainer probably 2, 3 days a week. I was going to school, so I was very focused in school, doing spent a lot of time studying. So a lot of my life was studying, going to class, working out at the gym, spending time with friends when I could. It was pretty active life, but at that point in time, I was really focused on getting back into shape and
Hmm.
losing some weight and staying very active physically in the gym. So that's really kind of the what was going on at that point in time.
Yeah. Okay. So you were a very active person. Accident
Mhm.
happened. Then what changed in life for you after the accident?
Well, immediately afterwards, my right arm was in a sling because my shoulder blade had broken in half.
Wow.
I had this boot on for my leg because I had a fracture in my fibula, and I basically couldn't really do much. I was in school, and with the way that my campus is, it's very hilly. Luckily, they gave me a golf cart to help me get from point A to point B.
That's nice.
But
That's great.
yeah, that was really nice. I mean, I had my own golf cart for the whole semester to get around campus, so it was really kind of nice.
Hmm.
But but for the first 4 days, I stayed at a friend's house and just was recovering, laying on their couch, not really doing much. And then I started going back to school, which, looking back, it probably would have been a good idea for me to just, taken that semester off and focused on my healing. But I was kind of stubborn and I said, no, I can still go to class while I'm on pain medication and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
we'll just say that I didn't do that. I didn't do my best that semester. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I was really dealing with a lot. But immediately, I mean, as soon as the accident happened, I stopped going to the gym, and it was a few months before I was able to go back to the gym.
Hmm.
And so, I would go to class when I could, but a lot of my time was spent just laying in bed, letting my leg heal, letting my shoulder heal, and just really taking it easy because it hurt to get around. And
Hmm.
um, so I became completely opposite of active. I was basically just, not really doing much. And that lasted for at least probably 2 months where I really wasn't doing anything physical, any extracurriculars at all. And I was living on campus at the time, which really helped. I was living in a dorm room. So all of my classes were within, normally a 5-minute walk, but a 2-minute uh, golf cart ride. So
Okay.
that was nice being able to just, having everything be right there. So that was a huge blessing that I wasn't having to get in a car and go for drives and stuff like that. But that was another thing. I wasn't able to drive for probably 2 months after that, um, which obviously, impacted me in certain ways. I had to take Ubers when I had to go to medical appointments and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, were you even able, you said that you were sleeping on somebody's couch for a while, and then for those 2 months, I mean, you weren't able to really work out. It was really hard to drive. What was it like just trying to sleep at night? I mean, your whole body is like got all these injuries on it. I mean, how did you fall asleep? I mean, how did that even work?
Yeah, I was able to sleep, but it was interesting. I had my arm in this sling, so my arm was just pressed up tight against my body. And at nighttime, I would take the boot off of my leg and just have it on the side of my bed and lay there. And I can't specifically remember if sleep was much of a problem at that point in time, but it certainly was uncomfortable for a while as I was
Hmm.
continuing to heal, and sometimes I would wake up and would have, like, rolled over on my shoulder, and it was it would hurt. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there was some times where it was a little bit difficult, but I don't think it was like my sleep was like very, very impacted.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of the story of what was happening with your accident. Tell me a little bit now about what happened in the doctor's office. I mean, you got treatments, were seeing different doctors and different therapists for a lot of different things. I mean, at this point, within that first 2 months, what were you doing medically for your body?
So within the first couple months, I had a few different checkups with my doctors, and basically it was, just seeing how my leg was healing, seeing how my shoulder was healing. Um, Early on, I didn't notice a whole lot going on with my back. The back stuff didn't pick up till a few months after the accident. But I think the first couple months, it was just kind of pain management, letting my body heal and just not doing anything that was gonna, put my healing at risk.
Hmm.
Um, so I didn't really start any treatments or anything like that, I think, until probably 4, 5, maybe 6 months after the accident when I actually started doing physical therapy on my shoulder, um, and did that kind of stuff.
Okay. And then how did that work for you? Was that effective for you?
I think the physical therapy for my shoulder was it was okay. It was, I probably did at least probably 10 to 15 sessions on my shoulder, but it did continue to hurt. And I eventually decided after meeting with my doctor that I would go through, he recommended surgery on my shoulder blade. And so, uh, basically decided with him, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll do the orthoscopic surgery because my arm, I was just, it was sore. It was like it was sore all the time. And come to find out that I had bone spurs that had been growing in my shoulder area. So there
Okay.
were
Wow.
certain motions like putting my arm above my head, things like that, that started to begin to bother me, 4, 5, 6 months after the accident.
Hmm. When they went in and they removed those bone spurs, then you came back, you moved your arm. Did you go back to PT or did you do other things after that with your shoulder?
I think I went back to PT probably maybe like 5 or 6 more sessions after that, but they gave me a lot of exercises that I could do at home.
Okay.
And eventually I just got kind of tired of going to PT. So I just
Hmm.
started doing the at home exercises. And since the surgery, I still maybe have a little bit of soreness in my shoulder every now and then. And I think the best way I could describe maybe any of the damage that stayed is I would never be able to throw a baseball as hard or fast as I used to be able to.
Okay.
But apart from that, I haven't noticed too much of an issue. I'm still able to lift weights and work out and stuff like that without having any problems. So after I had
Wow.
the shoulder surgery, had a little bit more PT and continue to kind of work it out on my own, my shoulder was 95% better at that
Okay.
point.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. But you also still had stuff going on with your back that you were dealing with too, right?
Yeah, so the back, that was a whole process. I mean, probably between 6 to 8 months after my surgery, or sorry, after the accident, I started noticing that I my back was kind of beginning to hurt in the lower kind of middle region of my back when I would be walking, and mostly when I was walking. And so I started going to a chiropractor
Hmm.
and had him do a little bit of work on my back, which I think helped out a little bit. And then I probably saw him maybe between 6 to 10 times for that initial pain in my back. And then about a few months after that, I would say maybe about a year and a half after the accident, I started noticing that when I was sitting, I still remember when I first started noticing it was like when I would be sitting for a little while, I would start to kind of get a little uncomfortable. It was like this pain started kind of coming into my back, my lower back. And as time would go by, I started noticing it was getting worse and worse. And eventually it got to the point where I couldn't sit any longer than 2 or 3 minutes without it feeling like someone had a ballpoint pen and they were just pushing it into my lower back.
Okay,
And
wow.
so the extreme back pain happened relatively quickly. It started off as I kind of noticed that I was having some pain when I was sitting, and then within a month or two, it became almost excruciating to stay sitting for much more than a few minutes.
Okay, just within a month or two of the accident, that's when you started feeling that it was painful within sitting?
No, so I started noticing within probably 6 or 7 months, 6 to 8 months after the accident, that when I was walking, I was starting to have some pain in my back, and so I did went to the chiropractor and had a few treatments with him, a few adjustments, which I think maybe helped out a little bit. But about, let's see, about a year and a half after the accident was when I really started noticing that I was having some pain in my lower back that was coming on when I was sitting. At this point, if I would stand up or lay down, I wouldn't feel that pain. But when I was sitting, over the course of 2 or 3 minutes, the pain just started welling up. And like I said, the best way to describe it is if someone had a ballpoint pen, and the longer that I continued to sit, the harder they continued to push it into that one spot in my back.
Okay, wow. So right now, are you sitting?
So right now I'm laying on my couch. I had back surgery about oof, close to about 5 weeks ago now,
Okay.
and since then I've healed up pretty good. But I do lay down when you know time permits.
Mhm.
If I can be laying down, I still do lay down just to give my back that relief that it needs.
Okay. Tell me about what's the surgery that you just got 5 weeks ago. What kind of surgery was that?
Yeah, so the surgery that I had 5 weeks ago, it was a microdiscectomy procedure, which they go in orthoscopically from the back, and there's about maybe about a 1.5 inch incision, maybe 2 inch incision in my lower back that they opened up and went through orthoscopically. So they had a couple little tools, and from what I understand, a little microscopic camera that they go in through
Mhm.
the incision, and they look into the spinal column area where the disc that I had was bulging. And the reason that we discovered that I had this bulging disc was because after I started having this pain with my back, I met with my doctor and he decided to do an MRI on my back. And the MRI came back and it showed that I had this bulging disc. And before I even had the surgery, I went and had 3 different rounds of spinal injections, two that were steroids, one that was a plasma injection. And I got these, I think, over the course of about 6 months. And they helped with the pain, but they didn't solve the problem.
Okay.
And so about about 2 months ago, I started having some sciatic pain where I was experiencing pain not only in my back anymore, but down my leg and into my foot. And this started to worry me. So I got another MRI done, and my doctor said it looks like uh, the bulging disc situation is getting a little worse. And at that point, he recommended the microdiscectomy procedure.
Okay.
And so I did that about 5 weeks ago, kind of as a last straw. I had done some other chiropractic treatments when my back started having that pain from sitting, and then I had some injections. But ultimately, uh, with me, I think I just kind of got lazy because I didn't want to do any more injections. I didn't want to do
Sure.
any more PT. I just was like, if the surgery is, there's a good chance that it could solve this issue, then at that point said, okay, I'll do the surgery. And so did that about 5 weeks ago, and I'm still going through the recovery period of that, but it's been progressively getting better each day.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'll definitely be interested in hearing, months down the line how that surgery has affected you. But before that surgery, you've talked about a lot of different things, PT, chiropractic, different injections. What do you feel helped you the best with your low back out of all the things that you've tried?
Before the surgery,
Yeah.
so I had at one point my doctor recommended doing a spinal injection, an epidural spinal injection that would be a steroid. And so I went and I had that injection done, and I noticed some relief for maybe no more than a month. And after
Okay.
about a month, that same intense level of pain came back where I couldn't be sitting much more than 2 or 3 minutes, which for me was really hard because I was a student at the time and I was constantly having to stand up in the back of class, constantly wiggling around, and it just became very, uh, I guess you could just say, kind of destructive because I was struggling to stay focused in school. And
Mm-hmm.
so, about a month after my first injection, I got another steroidal spinal epidural injection, hoping that, okay, maybe this second one will really solve the issue. So, I got a second one. And this one, again, I noticed a little bit of relief for about 30 days. And then that same intensity of pain started coming back. And so at one point, I think that somewhere between, between 4 to 6 months, they said, okay, this time we want to try the PRP, the platelet rich plasma injection, which is different than the steroidal spinal injection, where I believe they probably use cortisone. The platelet rich plasma injection, they took a little bit of my blood, and then they kind of whipped it up in this little machine that they have that separates the blood from the plasma, and they took the plasma out of the thing that was holding it, and then they re-injected it back into the spinal column area where the bulging disc was. And for me, I don't know if it's this way for everybody, but for me, when I got that platelet rich plasma injection, that solved the problem in terms of having that severe intensity of pain. I could
Okay.
still get stiff back every now and then. I could still have some soreness in my back, but I could sit through it, and eventually that intensity kind of dissipated completely, and I would still have some soreness in the back every now and then, but it was nowhere near what it was before when I couldn't really sit for a few minutes. So again, for me, I don't know if it's this way for everybody, but for me, the plasma injection, the PRP injection, really put me back in a position where I could be sitting again without being in that excruciating pain that I had been in before.
Okay. Wow. So when they did that injection, I mean, where was it exactly in your body that they were trying to inject it into?
So for me, it was between the L4 and L5 vertebrae, which is the lumbar area, the lower back.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was the pain of mine was, if you could imagine like the center line that would split the back, equally in half. My pain was about an inch or 2.5 inches to the right of the center line. So it wasn't exactly in the middle, but off to the side a little bit.
Okay.
And so I believe that they targeted that specific area where I was experiencing the pain with the plasma injection.
Okay. And now, did they just do one single injection or did they do a series of injections?
So with the plasma injection, I only went once and I was in and out of there within, an hour.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
pretty quick.
So yeah, they take the blood out, separate blood and plasma, and then re-inject it back in. You just did that one time, and that was really effective for you.
It was really effective in terms of that, again, that intensity of that back pain. After that plasma injection, I was able, after about, a couple weeks when it really kicked in, I was able to sit again, like a normal person. And I
Okay.
remember I got the plasma injection done in the middle of December of last year, and this was between semesters at school. And
Mm,
so this we had about a 3-week break for Christmas break, and I remember starting back school that first week of January, going to my professors and saying, "Hey, just to let you know, I had some serious back issues last semester, and there's a good chance that I might need to be standing up in class because over the course of this 3-week period I had, where I had my spinal injection at the beginning of that 3-week period, I had been spending a lot of time laying down. So I went into this last semester or this semester of school kind of anticipating that once I started sitting like that again, the pain would come back. So I even forewarned my professors about it,
yeah.
but to my delight, I found that, that first day of class, I was able to sit through the whole class and then it just continued on like that. So for me, the plasma injection really helped with that back pain.
Mm,
Um, but then, after about 8 months, then I started having sciatic pain, where no longer was I having that pain in my back, but I was starting to feel pain and odd sensations down my leg and into my foot.
right.
And
Yeah.
so that was kind of the precursor to the conversation about it, getting the microdiscectomy procedure done.
Right. Totally. So, gosh, I mean, if you had gotten the PRP and if you hadn't, if that bulge just hadn't had occurred, do you feel like you would have been, able to get back to a lot of exercise and get really into an active lifestyle again? I mean, what way, if I were to put it almost like a percentage, like 0% was like the worst of all the back injury, and 100% was back to like, your peak fitness before the accident, before this sciatica pain, just with the PRP, what percent do you feel like you would have been on? I mean, how close were you to getting back to that peak fitness just from the PRP?
Yeah, I would say probably between 80 to 85%. I
Wow.
was
Okay.
able to pretty much go back to lifting heavy. I was back to squatting, 250 over 300 pounds. Um, and I was really able to basically get back to a normal routine. And then over the course of time, I started to have that the experience of the sciatic pain, but the plasma injection, in terms of the pain in my lower back, for me, it basically, I would say, between 80 to 85% better. I still had some pain in my lower back, but the pain was small enough that it was like I just got used to it, and it
Hmm.
wasn't really something that was interruptive by any means.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, wow. Well, it definitely sounds like you're really progressing on the road to recovery, and I'm hoping that the recovery from this surgery will be really, really effective and successful, and you can get right back there and into that active lifestyle again. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing back from you, in several months and seeing how you're recovering from that. I do want to ask, going through all the things that have worked for you, you were telling us about what worked the best. On the flip side, what were some of the things that maybe you feel like, I don't necessarily want to say they worked the worst, but just for you in your circumstance, maybe you feel like you could have skipped those before, or if you had kind of known what the process was like, you might have gone straight to the PRP or to something else instead.
Yeah, so when I first started having that intense back pain, I probably experienced that for about 2 months before I said, "Okay, I need to get something." But in those 2 months, I went back to my chiropractor and he would do I was going to the chiropractor probably about 3 times a week for mm, 2 to 3 months, and he would do the same adjustment every time, and the adjustment would give me like a little bit of relief, but really it only lasted like between 24 hours to 48 hours, and then it was back to normal.
Okay.
So while there was like a little bit of relief there, looking back with just the price tag on all that, and the time that I had to take out of my day to go and do that, looking back, I'm not sure that I would have done that. I think it may not have been what I needed. I think I was just kind of desperate wanting to do something. But the chiropractic, I don't really think did much for the back condition.
Okay.
The the epidural spinal injections with the cortisone, the steroid injections, those helped a little bit, but again, it was very temporary relief.
Okay.
So if I would have known what type of healing the plasma injection would have promoted in my lower back, I probably would have opted for that right off the bat
Mhm.
rather than chiropractic and the steroid plasma injections, or sorry,
Okay.
the steroid injections. But
Right.
the plasma injection was what really, for me, kind of put a cap on that pain and started to really reduce the amount of pain that I was having.
Yeah. No, that's really good to know that. And it's hard because everyone has, different accidents or,
Mhm.
long-term chronic pain. And there's so many different things that work for people. And not everybody knows kind of the effect of each different treatment or what it's going to be like when they go and experience that. And so I really appreciate you just sharing, what worked well for you and your body and in your circumstance with what happened and what you would have tried first so that other people if they're interested in it they can be a little bit more informed about what all their options are and be educated about how they can be working with their own body. So I think that's really helpful for a lot of people to hear all of that. I do want to dive into something else here. We've talked about what happened in the accident, how it's affected your body, the treatments that were working well for you, and what wasn't working well. But I mean, going through a life change like that can be really, really traumatic. I mean, did you have any kind of experience with like PTSD after that, or a little bit of depression or just sadness, and knowing that your life is a little bit different now, and it's hard to get back into that active lifestyle? I mean, that could be really, really difficult. That can be a huge burden. What was that like for you just on an emotional level?
Yeah, so it was definitely an emotional roller coaster for me. After the accident, there was an abrupt stop to my my workout routine, and I immediately became, I guess you could say, kind of depressed because I wasn't able to do anything physical. I was in really bad pain, and one of the ways that I was coping with that was just eating bad foods. And like I said, I wasn't very
Mm,
physically active, so I
yeah.
started gaining weight, and put on probably right after the accident. I put on probably 60 pounds
Hmm.
over the course of maybe 6 to 8 months. I was gaining weight pretty quickly,
Okay.
um, and it was hard. Getting back in the car for the first time, it was weird, and even now, 2 months, 2 years, and 8 or 9 months later, driving in the rain is not something that I like to do. I think there is a little PTSD there.
Yeah.
If it's raining, and I have to be on the freeway, I'm probably in the slow lane going 40, and people can just get mad at me. But it's
Totally.
interesting to have to
Totally. Yeah.
deal with it because
Right.
I just experience that fear now when I'm in the rain. But with right after the accident, I wasn't able to work out. I wasn't able to do anything. So I got kind of depressed and started eating badly, and I started gaining weight. And then about maybe a year or so, year and a half after the accident, I was kind of getting back into a normal routine. And so I started to get back in the gym, started working out again, and I was able to lose some weight again. But then I started having that severe back pain. And once that started happening right around November, maybe October of 2018,
Okay.
I started to gain weight again. And I
Okay.
think that was because being in that constant pain, that was very disruptive in terms of my ability to study, to do my job, to be in class and actually be able to pay attention and not just wiggling and squirming around and having to stand in the back. I went through this period of depression where I actually got put on an antidepressant medication.
Mhm.
And over the course of about 6 months, I gained about 70 pounds
Wow.
because I was just in constant pain that was it had become completely overwhelming to deal with. And so I, again, just me personally, I resorted to food and eating, bad food, and I kind of fell out of that active routine because before I had the injections, that the pain was so bad that I was really afraid, and playing around with this idea that what if this is how life is for me now?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what the treatments would do, the injections would do. All I knew was that I was in excruciating pain on a regular basis. And at that point in time, I didn't know if there was anything out there that would fix that. And
Yeah.
so constantly having thoughts of, I'm going to be in pain the rest of my life. I'm not ever going to be able to sit and all this stuff. I mean, those types of thoughts became intrusive because I was in so much pain that I was truly worried that that was what life was going to be like for me. And
Yeah.
so constantly feeling like that, I really, stressed myself out and started developing depression to the point where my doctor recommended I go on an antidepressant, which I ended up doing that for 5 or 6 months.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, the accident, the emotional toll that it took on me, it was a roller coaster ride over the course of the last 2 years and 8 or 9 months that since the accident, where I was, you know, going through a bit of a slump at the beginning where I was in a lot of pain, and then I put on some weight, and then I started to feel a little bit better, and so I got started getting back into a bit of a physical activity routine. Started, my mental health was getting better, and so I was losing that weight, kind of back on that, that incline, and then I started having that the serious back pain again, and then I started to, decline more with my mental health and began to kind of slack off at the gym, eventually stopped going to the gym. I was really struggling in school because I wasn't comfortable in class. And that took an emotional toll where my mental health began to decline again. And I started putting on weight and eating poorly. And like I said, I gained a lot of weight over the course of about 6 months, which really again took a toll on me in terms of my self image and my confidence in myself. And so it really was a roller coaster ride. And
Mhm.
I'm at the point now where after my surgery, I wanted to do anything and everything that I could to ensure that my body would heal as best as it could. So I changed up my diet, the way that I was eating. um, at this point now, I'm a little more physical. I'm able to do some type of stuff like when it comes to cardio and whatnot. I can't lift weights for a while, and I still have to go through physical therapy. But now I'm
Mhm.
back on that. My mental health is on the incline. It's doing better, and my weight is now starting to drop again.
Yeah.
So for me, that's an indicator that my overall, physical and mental well being is improving.
Yeah.
Um, so it really has been this roller coaster ride of, not doing so good, not doing so good. Okay, now I'm getting better, getting better. Oh, now this thing popped up and now I'm declining again. And okay, got some treatments. Now it's getting better. So hopefully I'm on the up and up moving forward. But with this type of thing, you never know what could come up down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And you used a word there that I really want to point out. Hopefully, I'm eager to hear from you. You know, when you're going through this whole accident, this whole scenario in your life, what is the hope that you have getting through this?
Well, my hope is that I get to a point where I'm no longer, affected by the damage that occurred during the accident.
Mm,
I think I've gotten pretty much there, 95% of the way there with my shoulder, but the back has been a little more, it's just been a little more temperamental in terms of staying staying good.
yeah.
And so there's still part of me that, is a little concerned that even though I've had surgery and my condition is improving, you hear stuff like, oh, well, once you have back surgery, you can expect problems 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, whatever that is.
Mm,
So my ultimate hope and goal is that, with having this recent back surgery, with changing up my diet and beginning to lose weight again, my hope is that I can just function normally again, and have good physical health and not have these injuries that were sustained in the accident have a negative impact on my quality of life, or just the types of things that I'm able to do on a regular basis.
yeah. What has it been like for you in your community? Friends, family, how have they interacted with you? Has that taken a toll on them as well? Has it been difficult for you, trying to hang out with friends, but they want to go, play ice hockey? And it's like, I might not be able to do that right now. How has it affected your community going through all of this?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there was definitely times where, um, I wanted to be able to do things, but because of the pain that I was going through, I wasn't able to participate in certain things with friends, and I really felt like for a while it did impact my ability to really feel like I was connected with my community of friends and people that I hang out with. Uh, so that was a difficult part, and especially, recently recovering from my back surgery, I had to take time off work. Uh, I've had to, you know, basically turn down invitations to do certain things because I was just thinking, that's going to be a little too taxing on my recovery. So over the course of the past, 2.5 years or so, the injuries definitely played a role in my ability to be out there in the world as much as I would like to, and as much as is good for me. Because
Mm,
it's good to be in community. It's good to be with your friends and doing things. So the impact that my injuries had on my ability to remain fully integrated with my community of people, it's tough. And I think it's
yeah,
still something that I am working through and working on getting back to kind of that normal of being around friends, participating in different things I like doing, like hanging out with friends, going to church, those types of things for me, which really are life giving.
yeah,
uh, I've been a little kind of disconnected from where I would like to be in terms of my ability to remain active and integrated in certain groups. So it's definitely played a role, and I
hmm,
think that it's something that I'm still working on getting back to, I guess you could say, a normal where I'm, regularly with people. But, you know, over the course of the last probably year and a half or so, I think that the injuries had enough of an effect on me in terms of my pain and having to go through treatments and whatnot that I do feel like I've become a little more isolated at home. And I think part of that probably would have to do with kind of the emotional roller coaster that I went through and that I've been going through. Uh, that for me has kind of caused me to uh, disengage from a lot of the stuff that I was normally doing and that I would really
yeah.
enjoy. Got a lot of fulfillment out of.
Yeah, absolutely. I know having community is so important, especially with such an intense, life changing event like that. You need to have that friends and family that can be with you, that can understand. Because it's hard because, people saw who you were before the accident. And it's hard
Sure.
for people to kind of transition in their mind, like, oh no, things are different for that person now. And I need to accommodate those differences, and it can be really difficult for a lot of people, and it can be difficult to stay connected with friends. So yeah, having community is so important. it's so important for emotional health, for people to help you with what's going on physically and things in your body. I, I I think that you're doing the right thing, trying to stay connected with people, and it can be really, really difficult for a lot of people on both sides of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, Going back, we've talked about a lot of your journey, a lot of, the ups and downs, the roller coasters, like you were saying. Going back to when this first started, right after that accident, in that kind of 2 month zone where you were recovering at the very beginning, what would you be able to go back and tell yourself now that you think would totally have changed a lot of the way that you recovered in the past couple years?
I think a big part of it was early on when I was dealing with a lot of my injuries. I think I pushed myself too hard. I don't think I gave myself adequate time to just recover and take it easy. I wanted to get back to the gym and doing all this stuff as quickly as possible, and I think I may have pushed myself a little harder than I should have,
Hmm.
especially early on when I probably should have really I stayed in school. I stayed, going to class every day. And I think putting myself in a position where not only was I trying to focus on my recovery from this accident that had really, had hurt me, but I also gave myself the unnecessary stress of trying to make good grades in school and trying to keep up with all this other stuff. So one thing I think I wish that I may have done back then was given myself permission to go through a process of healing and recuperating rather than just trying to, as quickly as possible, dive back into all of this other stuff that
Hmm.
was also, you know, demanding and stressful. And so I think that that would probably be one of the most important things I would, would have wished that I would have known back then. But, I had to go through that experience to kind of learn those lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be really difficult to be patient with your body when it's healing
Mhm.
and to not go and do everything, to get back to the level of activity that you were in before. It can be really challenging for a lot of people. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, David, thank you so much for being on today. You've shared some really deep stuff about just an injury that nobody ever wants to go through, and something that can be really intense for a lot of people who do go through those. And I appreciate you just talking about, what worked well for you, what didn't, talking about how it affected you emotionally. I know that can be really, really hard, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm really eager to just hear what the future is for you. I think that you've gained a lot of wisdom in going through this, and it's awesome that you've been able to share that today. And I think that in the future you're going to learn even more information, and discover more things about your body and how you can grow even more. I'm really encouraged just to see where you're at right now and how you're progressing, and I'm excited to look into the future and just see what's going to be happening with you next with your life and what the next journey is. I'm hoping that the roller coaster will will change into a different kind of amusement park ride, and it'll be something that's a little bit easier for you. But I do just really appreciate you sharing today. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, in terms of looking towards the future, I'm really looking forward to getting started with physical therapy in a couple weeks to kind of stay on the mend from recovering from my back surgery. But for me, a huge thing that I think I've taken away over the last 2.5 years or so is just the importance of taking care of your health and your body. So one thing that I've been recently doing was I've been eating a plant-based diet. This
Hmm.
actually came as a recommendation from my doctor, and I never in a million years would have thought I would have done something like that. But I decided to go ahead and go through with it just because I want to really try to give my body everything that it needs to heal and grow. And so getting back into a good physical shape for me and just physical health, mental health is really one of my top priorities right now. Just taking care of my body, doing the things that I need to do to promote healing and growth, and then stay focused on my bigger goals for life, which is to continue doing the type of work now, which I work in the mental health field, doing substance abuse counseling. But I
Hmm.
really want to continue to grow as a counselor, and I have a passion for public speaking. So I'm really involved with Toastmasters
Hmm.
and developing my communication skills and my ability to speak. But ultimately, I would just want to use all these experiences that I've been through and use what I've learned and kind of the insight that I've gained to really try to help other people get through their own hard and difficult situations and come out on top. So that's really for me what my future holds, is continuing to work on my physical health and my mental health, and also my career goals, and also one day having a family and continuing to try to do good things in the world. It's been, I've really enjoyed this, and I'm hoping that what we've done here today may some way, some shape, some form be helpful to other people out there.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with David Hall. If you want to be involved with the podcast, there are two ways for you to do that. First, if you have any questions you want answered or topics you want us to talk about in the future, then click on the Beat Pain website link in the show notes and message me. Second, if you want to continue listening to great content and guests, then I need your help to build the podcast and get those guests on the show. The bigger the podcast gets, the easier it is for me to bring on more people to interview. Subscribing, writing a review, and sharing this with others helps this show to grow. Thank you so much for listening.